Ready? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Welcome everybody to the Safina Society Nothing But Facts live stream on a rainy Tuesday in the great state of New Jersey. As always, got to give you the weather report. It's raining today and it's not even cold. It's not even hot. Like, I don't know what's going on with the weather in New Jersey. It's like Florida weather now. It's up and down heat, like insane heat, like 95 degrees, 97 degrees, 98 degrees, and then rain that gets us flood alerts, and that stops within 2 hours. So it's so radical, and we got like Caribbean weather here, because in Florida that's the weather. Super hot, then insane rains. Like you have to stay in your car if you're out and you get home. Got away. Today's what did I say? Tuesday. It's a Wednesday. It is. I said Tuesday because it's the second day of the stream. It's a Wednesday, which means we're going to go until about 1:50. We're going to stop for dua and dhikr, and then we're going to be done by 2 o'clock, or maybe a little bit. Let's say 2:15. Hilarious story here. Global Eye News puts out a story. Breaking: the U.S. government mistakenly transferred $239 million to the Taliban. Someone's getting fired. But listen to this. Ex-Muslim Inc., which he makes fun of. It's a parody account. He's a Muslim guy, but it's making fun of ex-Muslims. I guess his comment is hilarious. He says, first jizya installment. Is that not hilarious or what? That is a good joke. Another brother said they must have been reciting Surah Al-Waqi'ah. Surah Al-Waqi'ah for rizq. And anyway, let's get going with this. Today we are going to talk about Anwa' al-Bid'ah. Anwa' al-Bid'ah, and we're going to talk about the hadith of kullu bid'atin dalalah. Every innovation is a misguidance. Right? That's what we're going to talk about today. That's our subject matter today. We're going to read from Ibn Hajar al-Askalani, Imam al-Nawawi, Ibn Abdul Barr, Ibn Hajar al-Haytami. There's two Ibn Hajars here. Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali and Imam Suyuti. We're going to read from 6 books. When you always hear, that's an innovation. This is a bid'ah. So you got to pay attention because, well, are all bid'ahs one? So, for example, if you go to a community and every single person, after assalamu alaikum for salah, immediately they shake your hand, taqabbal Allah. Every single salah. Well, that's an innovation. Is that an innovation at the same level of believing that Adam evolved? Or are there a gradation of innovations? That's the question we're going to answer. All right, first reading. Let's read the first from Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. حدثنا آدم بن أبي إياس حدثنا شعبة أخبرنا عمرو بن مرة سمعت مرة الهمداني يقول قال عبد الله إن أحسن الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها. Okay. شر الأمور محدثاتها. In this hadith, the worst of affairs are their newly invented affairs. Okay. So تقدم هذا الحديث بدون هذه الزيادة. He's just talking about this hadith has come previously in other books. وذكرت ما يدل على أن البخاري اختصره هناك, and Bukhari summarized this narration in his entry. وكان متفق عليه لتخريج مصنفين المقتصرين على الأحاديث المرفوعة الأحاديث الواردة في شمائله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Okay, let's get to the content. والمحدثات محدثة المراد بها ما أحدث, that which is new. وليس له أصل في الشرع. First condition. ليس له أصل في الشرع. Does not have any basis in the shara. So the first thing is, let's define al-muhdath. And Ibn Hajar says here, Al-muhdath, that which is considered brand new, ما ليس له أصل في الشرع ويسمى في عرف الشرع بدعة. And we call that thing that has no origin in the Sharia, the technical term for that in Sharia is bid'ah. وما كان له أصل يدل عليه الشرع فليس ببدعة. And that which does have an origin in the Sharia, له أصل يدل عليه الشرع. It has a root that the Sharia points to. يدل عليه الشرع فليس ببدعة, would not be considered a bid'ah. فالبدعة في عرف الشرع مذمومة بخلاف اللغة. So the word bid'ah in Sharia is blameworthy. Unlike bid'ah in language, which could be good, right? A bid'ah in language. When we say bid'ah in language, for example, someone innovated a piece of technology. That's fine. Benefited people with it. So in language, linguistically, not a problem. فإن كل شيء أحدث على غير مثال يسمى بدعة. Anything that is totally brand new, that there's no connection to it in the past, linguistically we call it a bid'ah. All right. سواء كان محمودا أو مذموما, whether it's good or bad. So someone invents a nuclear bomb, he innovated something. Someone created the the assembly line, that's also another innovation, or inventing a car or inventing a phone, whatever. So linguistic innovation is anything that's new. All right, so no issues here so far. وكذا القول في المحدثة في الأمر والمحدث الذي ورد في حديث عائشة من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد كما تقدم شرحه ومضى بيان ذلك قريبا في كتاب الأحكام وقد وقع في حديث جابر المشار إليه وكل بدعة ضلالة. Okay, so he points to another hadith. He says the definition of this bid'ah is found in Sayyidah Aisha's hadith. من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه. Whoever innovates something in this affair of ours, meaning in religion, not in technology, not in medicine, not in anything else, in religion, that which is not from it, ما ليس منه فهو رد. It's rejected. Okay? And he says that he went over this in other books and in other chapters. وإياكم ومحدثات الأمور. And beware of newly invented matters. فإن كل بدعة ضلالة. Every innovation is a misguidance. Okay. فذكره فيه هذا أخرجه أحمد وأبو داود الترمذي وصححه وابن حبان والحاكم. وهذا الحديث في المعنى قريب من حديث عائشة. These hadith are all similar to one another. قال الشافعي البدعة بدعتان محمودة ومذمومة. He quotes now his Imam, because Ibn Hajar is a Shafi'i. He quotes a Shafi'i. البدعة بدعتان محمودة ومذمومة فما وافق السنة فهو محمود وما خالفه فهو مذموم. That which is in line with the Sunnah is praiseworthy, mahmud. That which contradicts the Sunnah is blameworthy. So here the great Imam Ash-Shafi'i is dividing innovations into two categories. That which is blameworthy and that which is praiseworthy. And how do you judge it? You compare it against the Sharia. Okay? A very simple example, opening up a Quran school, right? And saying from 9 to 10, you guys review. From 10 to 11, you memorize the new chapters. From 10 to 11, you maybe learn some language so that you can memorize the Quran easier. From 12 to 1, you go and study the Quran again. Who's telling, where did that come from? Things like that. So he says now, let's keep reading. أخرجه أبو نعيم بمعناه من طريق إبراهيم ابن الجنيد عن الشافعي وجاء عن الشافعي أيضا ما أخرجه البيهقي في مناقبه. Also Imam al-Bayhaqi, he includes this in his biography of الشافعي. قال المحدثات ضربان. New matters, things you could say the Sahaba never did it, the Prophet ﷺ never did it, otherwise it wouldn't be muhdathat, right? Muhdath means something new, right? What's going on in the chat?
There's a lot of trolls today.
Nobody's saying that I'm not is there an issue with the picture? Picture's fine, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going. المحدثات ضربان. ما أحدث. New matters are of two types. That which was invented or someone came up new. يخالف كتابا أو سنة أو أثرا أو إجماعا. فهذه بدعة الضلال. That which is a newly invented matter, but it contradicts the book, the sunnah, the athar, meaning the sayings of the early salaf and the early Muslims. It contradicts it. Or ijma' of the Muslims. That is the bid'ah that leads astray. وَمَا أُحْدِثَ مِنَ الْخَيْرِ. That which is invented of good. You came up with something new. Like what's his example in Shafi's lifetime that he approved of? The additional words to the takbir of Eid. We all know the takbirat of Eid. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, wa lillahi alhamd. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, wa lillahi alhamd. That's how it is. Right? 3 takbirs, la ilaha illallah. 2 takbirs, wa lillahi alhamd. However, he went to Egypt and he found the Egyptians had added to it. صدق وعدا ونصر عبدا وهزم الأحزاب وحدا. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى أزواج سيدنا محمد وعلى أنصاره, etc. So Imam al-Shaf, that is an invention. They added words to the takbir that the Prophet ﷺ gave when Shafi'i approved of it. All right. So al-Shafi'i himself is saying now, وَمَا أُحْدِثَ مِنَ الْخَيْرِ. That which is invented of good things. لا يخالف شيئا من ذلك. فهذه محدثة غير مذمومة. So he says that newly invented matter that does not contradict the book, the sunnah, the athar, and the ijma', then that is something that is an invention in the deen that is not blameworthy. وقسم بعض علماء البدعة إلى الأحكام الخمسة وهو واضح. And some of the ulama have divided up the bid'ah in action into 5 categories. That which is permitted, that which is recommended, that which is obligatory, could be obligatory. That like using a mic for salah. They're gathering the Quran in the time of the Sahaba. That bid'ah that is discouraged, and that bid'ah that is forbidden. Right? وهو واضح. وثبت عن ابن مسعود, he says. We're reading Ibn Hajar on bid'ah. So we're going to read 6 entries. Ibn Hajar, in Nawawi, Ibn Abdul Barr, who came before them, Al-Haytami, Ibn Rajab, and Suyuti. All on the hadith of كل بدعة ضلالة. All right. What did Ibn Mas'ud say? قد أصبحتم على الفطرة وإنكم ستحدثون ويحدث لكم فإذا رأيتم محدثة فعليكم بالهدي الأول فما حدث تدوين الحديث ثم تفسير القرآن ثم تدوين المسائل الفقهية المولدة عن الرأي المحض ثم تدوين ما يتعلق بأعمال القلوب فأما الأول فأنكره عمر وأبو موسى وطائفة ورخص فيها الأكثرون وأما الثاني فأنكره جماعة من التابعين كالشعبي وأما الثالث فأنكره الإمام أحمد وطائفة يسيرة وكذا اشتد إنكار أحمد للذي بعده ومما حدث أيضا تدوين القول في أصول الديانات فتصدى لها المثبتة والنفاة فبالغ الأول حتى شبه وبالغ الثاني حتى عطل واشتد إنكار السلف لذلك كأبي حنيفة وأبي يوسف والشافعي وكلامهم في ذم أهل الكلام مشهور وسببه أنهم تكلموا فيما سكت عنه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأصحابه ثبت عن مالك أنه لم يكن في عهد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأبي بكر وعمر شيء من الأهواء يعني بدع الخوارج والروافض والقدرية وقد توسع من تأخر عن القرون الثلاثة الفاضلة في غالب الأمور التي أنكرها أئمة التابعين وأتباعهم ولم يقتنعوا بذلك حتى مزجوا مسائل الديانة بكلام اليونان وجعلوا كلام الفلاسفة أصلا يردون إليه. Talking about the Mu'tazila. ما خالفه من الآثار بالتأويل ولو كان مستكرها ثم لم يكتفوا بذلك حتى زعموا أن الذي رتبوه هو أشرف العلوم وأولها بالتحصيل وأن من لم يستعمل ما اصطلحوا عليه فهو عامي جاهل فالسعيد من تمسك بما كان عليه السلف واجتنب ما أحدثه الخلف وإن لم يكن له منه بد فليكتفي منه بقدر الحاجة ويجعل الأول المقصود بالأصالة والله الموفق. وقد أخرج أحمد بسند جيد عن غضيف ابن الحارث قال. All right, let me translate first. It's a lot. Okay. All right. Let's translate for it. All right, so now he begins and he gives a narration from Abdullah bin Mas'ud. You are upon the fitrah and new things will occur. If you see them, then you are up. Alaykum bil hadi al-awwal. Go with the original guidance. All right, meaning go back in time to the guidance that the Prophet and his companions were on. So the first bid'ah, as Ibn Hajar is saying here, the first bid'ah here is, let me see which. Yeah, the first innovation was writing the Quran. Okay, the first bid'ah was tadween al-hadith, ثم تفسير القرآن, writing down hadith, writing down the tafsir of the Quran, and then writing down issues of fiqh and chapterizing them, and then having opinion in matters in which the text is not clear. All these are innovations that came, and you have to in each time assess what is guided from this and what is not. And then a'mal al-qulub, tasawwuf, he's saying basically a'mal al-qulub, the matters of the heart, to write that down. That was not something the Sahaba did. So what is envy? How do we define envy? What are the states of the heart, etc.? So as for the first one, Umar and Abu Musa had issues with much writing down of hadith because why? In itself, no, they feared error and they feared tasahul, taking it too lightly. وَطَائِفَةً. But most of the companions, they recognize its values. وَرَخَّصَ فِيهَا الْأَكْثَرُونَ. So here, in every new matter, there is some debate happening here. So when hadith was documented, even Umar ibn Khattab was hesitant because he saw that this thing could go astray. There could be errors here, and there were. We do see that. So now that we're documenting hadith, give it some time, and a whole group of people began lying about the Prophet, peace be upon him, and that's why or they were very sloppy about transmitting from the Prophet, peace be upon him. So alaykum bil hadi al-awwal means you have to be extremely cautious about these new matters, and what he's going to say here is take only what is absolutely necessary. Of course, you have to write hadith. It's an absolute necessity, as you have to document the Quran and write that into a book. These things are absolutely necessary. There's no discussion. So then we have, for example, وَأَمَّا الثَّالِث. What is الثالث? الرَّأِي, مسائل الرَّأِي. Imam Ahmad, he أنكره Imam Ahmad. Matters that did not come up in the time of the Prophet and the companions, and now we have to answer them. Imam Ahmad was extremely speculative about this. Skeptical about this. And he found it blameworthy. فَأَنْكَرَهُ الْإِمَامِ أَحْمَدُ وَطَائِفَ يَسِيرًا, and a small group. So again, now that, all right, we got issues that never came up in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. We have to write them down. We got to answer them. And this is what he's going to bring up, masail of fatwa in fiqh and kalam in aqeedah. So Imam Ahmad, and he says, طَائِفَ يَسِيرًا, and a small group said no to all of this. وَكَذَا اشْتَدَّ إِنْكَارَ أَحْمَدْ لِلَّذِي بَعْدَهُ. ومما حدث أيضا تدوين القول في أصول الديانات. Now, matters related to aqeedah, that what are the necessary beliefs that a Muslim must have? What would put a person out of Islam altogether if he rejected it? What would put him outside of Ahl Sunnah if he rejected it? What would simply make him wrong if he rejected it? And what is not necessary to believe at all? It's like a belief that you may have and may not have. So even in matters of aqeedah, not all errors are the same. And this is a big issue when you look at online. People may misunderstand certain things. Errors in aqeedah are not all the same. Some errors in aqeedah will put you outside of Islam. That's that which is explicit and widespread. Mutawatir, al-riwaya, qat'i al-dalala. And there are errors that would not put you out of Islam, but would put you outside of Ahl Sunnah. And examples of those are that which is qat'i al-dalala, however, not mutawatir al-riwaya. It's not widespread. You need to have some kind of study to know this. But once you do know it, it's not up for discussion. Qat'i al-dalala means something not up for discussion. It only has one meaning. Then there are matters that are dhanni al-dalala. Its meaning may have possible meanings, and then you interpreted it outside that meaning, and it's not mutawatir. So as a result of that, if you go against it, you'd just be wrong. But it doesn't remove you from Ahl Sunnah, and definitely doesn't remove you from Islam. What does it mean to be removed from Ahl Sunnah? It means you're an innovator. You're a heretic. Your good deeds don't count. Okay? It means your good deeds don't count. You're a Muslim. We treat you like a Muslim. But your good deeds are not counting until you fix your belief. These are the sects of Islam. And then there are a hadith that are maybe, it could be weak. Could be a weak hadith, but it pertains to matters of belief. It's not obligatory to believe in it at all. You may believe in it, you may not believe in it. So there's a gradation in error. Not all errors are the same. And that's the big, it's so simplistic and simple to say, all right, if it's in the Quran, let's believe it. If it's not, it's not. Yeah, that's simplistic. But in the Quran itself has matters that are dhanni al-dalala. Of course, qat'i, thubut. We know it's a verse of Quran, but what it means can mean different things. Not everything of the Quran has only one possible meaning. Let's continue. And وَكَلَامُهُمْ, and their speech in the blameworthiness of theological disputation is well known, he says. كَلَامُهُمْ فِي ذَمِّ أَهْلِ الْكَلَامِ مَشْهُورٌ. Abu Hanifa and Malik and Shafi, and Ahmad ibn Hanbal, they all attacked the initial dialectical theologians. Why is that? Because the initial people who wanted to respond to these new questions that came up were the Mu'tazila. So what they were blaming was the departure of the Mu'tazila from Islamic teachings that are in the Quran and in the Hadith. The concept of answering back to atheists, answering back to philosophers, answering back to innovators is not what they disagreed upon. They didn't differ upon that. Okay. He says here, وَسَبَبُهُ, all right, the first, the origin, the sabab, is that they spoke about matters. They spoke about matters that the Prophet, peace be upon him, didn't speak about, and the companions didn't speak about. And Malik said, in their time, in the time of the Prophet and the Sahaba, there were no innovations at all. Hence, there was no precedent of how to go about to do this. Malik himself says, in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, there was no innovation. In the time of this Abu Bakr and Umar, there was no innovation. So now when Muslims now have heretics and they need to respond, and they are responding, the first generation to do this, the first group to do this, the Mu'tazila, they went astray in doing so. How did they go astray? He says here, أنكرها أئمة التابعين ولم يقتنعوا بذلك حتى مزجوا. They mixed, they confused and mixed matters of religion with the philosophy of the Greeks. And who is this? The Mu'tazila. وَجَعَلُوا كَلَامَ الْفَلَاسِفَةِ أَصْلًا يَرِدُونَ إِلَيْهِ أو يردون إليه ما خالفه من الآثار بالتأويل ولو كان مستكرها. So he says here they were Mu'tazila, all right, and they mixed Greek thought with their thought, and then they made what the philosophers said to be an asl, the assumptions of the philosophers. The assumptions of the philosophers to be an asl. If a hadith or a verse contradicted that, they went with the philosophers and they pushed away the verse and the hadith. زعموا أن الذي رتبوه هو أشرف العلوم, and they brought and they held to much high esteem the Greek logicians and the Greek philosophers, and they said this is the origin of all knowledge. Okay, and whoever doesn't know this stuff is an ami and an ignoramus. So that is why the originally in the time of the four Imams, dialectical theology, Ilm Al Kalam, was an innovation because of their methodology and their results. Not because of the concept that we need to answer atheists and we need to answer heretics. That's not the issue. All right, so let's continue here. وإن لم يكن له منه بد فليكتفي منه بقدر الحاجة ويجعل الأول المقصود بالأصالة والله الموفق. So he says here, when it is a dire need and a necessity to answer people, then suffice yourself with the texts. In other words, you cannot contradict our texts of Quran and Hadith when answering these people and establishing the principles of how to answer them. And that's what the theologians eventually did. وقد أخرج أحمد بسند جيد عن غضيف ابن الحارث قال بعث إلي or بعث, there must be a typo here, عبد الملك بن مروان فقال إنا قد جمعنا الناس على رفع الأيدي على المنبر يوم الجمعة وعلى القصص بعد الصبح والعصر فقال أما إنهما أمثل بدعكم عندي ولست بمجيبكم إلى شيء منهما لأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من أحدث قوم بدعة إلا رفع من السنة مثلها فتمسك بسنة خير من إحداث بدعة وإذا كان هذا جواب هذا الصحابي في أمر له أصل في السنة فما ظنكم بما لا أصل له فيها. He gives a story about the companions. He said Abdul Malik ibn Marwan wrote to him a letter and he said, we're now setting a schedule. And after Subh and after Asr, we're going to tell people stories about the religion. That's what we're going to tell people stories about the Deen, the stories about the Sahaba. And what did this Sahabi say to him? This companion said, this is an innovation. I will not take part in it. Okay, so Ibn Hajar is saying, at that time, the companions considered that to be an innovation. Imagine what else. وقد مضى في كتاب العلم أن ابن مسعود كان يذكر الصحابة كل خميس لئلا يملوا ومضى في, and he said that now. So what is he saying here? Ibn Mas'ud used to remind the Sahaba every Thursday. He used to sit for a gathering every Thursday. When Ibn Abbas, so that they would not get bored with religion, so he'd give them a reminder. Ibn Abbas قال حدث الناس كل جمعة فإن أبيت فمرتين ونحوه وصية عائشة لعبيد بن عمير والمراد بالقصص التذكير والموعظة وقد كان ذلك في عهد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لكن لم يكن يجعله راتبا كخطبة الجمعة بل بحسب الحاجة. So this hadith here says, this narration here says that the Prophet used to have it, but he would only do it because there was a need. And he wouldn't make it repetitive every single day as a schedule. أما قوله في حديث العرباض فإن كل بدعة ضلالة وإياكم محدثات الأمور فإنه يدل على أن المحدث يسمى بدعة وقوله كل بدعة ضلالة قاعدة شرعية كلية بمنطوقها ومفهومها وأما منطوقها فكأن يقال حكم كذا بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة. This doesn't. What am? Okay. والمراد بقوله. والمراد بقوله كل بدعة ضلالة ما أحدث لا دليل له من الشرع بطريق خاص لا عام. So he's saying here, Ibn Hajar is saying here, that which كل بدعة ضلالة, every innovation is a misguidance. That which is new without an evidence from the Sharia, and it is specific, not general. Right? So first of all, he's saying that the one companion negated, he said, no, I'm not going to attend to these routine gatherings because that's an innovation. Then again, Ibn Mas'ud and Ibn Abbas did have routine gatherings. So every Tuesday this, every Monday this. So here you have the Sahaba differed upon the matter. And then he said there's also a difference upon this saying, كُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ. Is it قاعدة كلية or is it على طريق خاص? And there he's basically discussing also two different interpretations and indicators. فإنه يدل على أن المحدث يسمى بدعة وقوله كل بدعة ضلالة قاعدة شرعية كلية. قاعدة كلية means anything that begins with all. Okay? So by the language of it, every single innovation is a misguidance, unlike what Shafi said. However, he says here, ثبت أن الحكم المذكور بدعة صحة المتقدمتان وانتجتا المطلوب والمراد بقوله. Now there's the mantuq and there's the murad. So the wording of it would indicate that every single innovation is an innovation. However, what's meant by it is that which is innovated without any evidence. بطريق خاص لا عام. So it's not a قاعدة كلية. Right? And that's the end of... Oh, he has some more. He says... for an example, إنما توعدون لا أنتم بمعجزين وأراد ختم موعظته بشيء من القرآن يناسب الحال. وقال ابن عبد السلام العز ابن عبد السلام في أواخر القواعد البدعة 5 أقسام. Bid'ah of actions is in 5 categories. الواجبة كالاشتغال بالنحو الذي يفهم به كلام الله ورسوله لأن حفظ الشريعة واجب. So what are examples of the categories of innovations? This is a good clip for our for Waqqas. We'll recite here from Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam being cited by Ibn Hajar al-Askalani in Fath al-Bari. أقسام البدعة 5. The categories of innovations. Remember, we're talking about innovations of actions, not innovations of Aqeedah. Innovations of Aqeedah can render you out of Islam altogether, or a heretic and a sect and an innovator where you're a Muslim but your good deeds don't count, or simply wrong but you're still within Ahl Sunnah and your good deeds count for you, or even permitted. So they're bid'ah in Aqeedah we're not discussing right now. He's talking about bid'ah in actions. And we're citing from Izz ibn Abd al-Salam. And he gives an example of al-bid'ah al-wajiba, an obligatory innovation, something the Prophet and the Sahaba never did. And he says, getting busy learning grammar. Al-ishtighalu bin-nahu, studying grammar. Because only by studying language, vocabulary, and grammar, and sarf, syntax and morphology, can you understand the words of Allah and His Prophet and the Sharia, and upholding the Sharia is an obligation. Preserving the Sharia is an obligation. وَلَا يَتَأَتَّى إِلَّا بِذَلِكَ فَيَكُونُ مِنْ مُقَدِّمَةِ الْوَاجِبِ. So you can't understand the Sharia without understanding Arabic. So the study of Arabic is a fard kifaya on the ummah. It's a communal obligation. Every generation, some people have to preserve the Arabic language and study it and teach it. So that is an example of an obligatory innovation. وَكَذَا شَرْحُ الْغَرِيبِ وَتَدْوِينِ أُصُولِ الْفِقْهِ. You explaining words that are in hadith that are unknown or that are unique or that are not well known, and also documenting the methodology of deriving rulings. Okay. And likewise, it's an obligation to separate sound hadiths from unsound hadiths. Okay. Reading here from Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam's 5 categories of innovations. And an example of the forbidden innovation. Okay. ما رتبه من خالف السنة من القدرية والمرجئة والمشبهة. Beliefs, and he actually is now bringing up Aqeedah. What is forbidden? And this would even be more than forbidden. It would be put you out of Ahl Sunnah. completely. The beliefs of the Qadariyah, the beliefs of the Murji'ah, the beliefs of the Mushabbiha, anthropomorphists, or other sects in the history of Islam. And there are some innovations. So he went to the edges, the obligatory and the forbidden, because those are the important ones. Now let's go to the recommended innovation. والمندوبة كل إحسان لم يعهد عينه في العهد النبوي كالاجتماع على التراويح. Every good deed that didn't happen in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. كالاجتماع على التراويح, gathering for tarawih prayer. Building schools, بناء المدارس. والربط, and having citadels. And citadels, the citadels where you used to guard the land, and there's been no invading army for years and years and years. They ended up becoming schools, right? They just become schools because the guards have nothing else to do. والكلام في التصوف المحمود, speaking about the matters of the heart. Tasawwuf, what is envy, how to get rid of envy, how to draw near to Allah with your heart, etc., etc. وعقد مجالس المناظرة إن أريد بذلك وجه الله, and debates, the gatherings where you debate heretics, debate the Shia, debate the Qadariyya, debate the Mushabbiha, debate the Christians, if this reward of Allah Ta'ala is sought. In other words, not just for the sake of argumentation. Munadara. What about that which is mubah? Innovations that are simply permitted. المصاحفة عقب صلاة الصبح والعصر, shaking hands. المصافحة عقب صلاة الصبح والعصر, and subhanallah, that's what happens in Tarim. And now you know where how far back their usul are. In Tarim, Dar al-Mustafa, they have al-musafaha, where everybody shakes everyone's hands after subh and after asr. They do that in an organized fashion. So he's saying this permitted. والتوسع في المستلذات من أكل وشرب وملبس ومسكن. Having a big home, having a nice car, having nice clothes. It's an innovation. The Sahaba never did this. They didn't go out building nice homes for themselves and eating nice foods. They never went out trying to go, there's a new restaurant, let's go check it out. They never did this type of thing. So he says it's halal, it's permitted. وقد يكون بعض ذلك مكروها. And what about the discouraged innovations? Some of this that he's talking about, that is what's considered either recommended or permitted, another person may have a perspective that is makruh. So most of our brothers who would object to certain things like the gatherings of dhikr, the mawalid, the misbaha, all of that is within the differed upon matters of discouraged, permitted, or even recommended innovations. So that's where you will start to realize that a lot of times when we put a stake, what's the phrase? Put our flag down, or, draw a line in the sand. There is some opinion about that, right? There is an opinion about that. And so it's not all... it could be multiple valid opinions. Depending on the situation, it could deem them to both have different perspectives, just like there are different opinions in fiqh. All right, so that's Ibn Hajar al-Askalani. That's probably the longest entry. All right, so we'll click X on that. Let's go to Ibn Abdul Barr. Let's see how long his entry is on this. And this is from his book At-Tamheed. This is his main book. And he again quotes the hadith of Irbad, that the Prophet ﷺ gave us a great piece of advice, موعظة بليغة, eloquent advice that has everything in it. And he says, يا رسول الله إن هذه الموعظة مودعة إن هذه لموعظة مودع. Oh, Messenger of Allah, this sounds like advice of somebody who is leaving us. In other words, like you're parting from us. It's as if you're going back to Allah, giving that advice. The advice if someone is about to pass away. فَمَا تَعْهَدُ إِلَيْنَا. So what is the final word you have for us? قَالَ أُوصِيكُم بِتَقْوَى اللَّهِ. I advise you to have taqwa of Allah. وَالسَّمْعِ وَالطَّاعَةِ. Listen and obey. And even if your ruler is a Habashi. Why does the Prophet ﷺ say if your ruler is a Habashi? Why? Because Habashis are black and he's putting down black people? Habash is East Africa? No, because Habash, remember, they were the previous colonizers of the Arabs. And they're the ones who tried to destroy the Kaaba. So all throughout Arabia, Habashi is a bad person in general. The idea of being ruled by the Habash, right? It's almost like in 1800, saying the British in America. Oh, the British, they just colonized us. We just kicked them out. Or today, are you going to be ruled by Germans? Or let's say 1950. You're going to be ruled by Germans. The specter of Hitler is still there. So the Habash, when the Prophet uses that example about the East Africans, has nothing to do with the race of their skin. Because many Arabs were also very dark, like Sayyidina Ali, Sayyidina Zayd bin Haritha. Extremely dark. So it has nothing to do with them being black. It has to do with them being the most latest colonizers that tried to destroy the Kaaba, so we don't like them. That's why the Prophet ﷺ says, even if a Habashi rules over you, in other words, the people you hate. And if you come after me, the Prophet ﷺ said, if you live long after me, you're going to see a lot of bad things. اختلافا كثيرا, a lot of differences. فعليكم بسنتي وسنة الخلفاء الراشدين المهديين. It's upon you to take my sunnah, take the sunnah of the rightly guided khulafa. Remember, the rightly guided khalifas, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, when they make a public policy that has upon it ijma' as-sahaba, the consensus of the companions. Hence, it is a completely sound source of law. There's no discussion about it because all the Sahaba heard it. And it's a policy. Policies can't be vague. It's explicit and it's mutawatir. Ijma' as-sahaba. So he then continues and he says, bite on it with your back of your molars. وَإِيَّاكُمْ, beware of newly invented matters. مُحْدَثَاتُ الْأُمُورِ فَإِنَّ كُلَّ مُحْدَثَةٍ بِدْعَةٍ. Every one of these muhdatha is an innovation. وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ. And every bid'ah is a misguidance. وَرَوَى الْأَشْعَري عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال آمركم بخمس أمرني الله بهن. I command you to 5 things Allah commanded me to them. الجماعة والسمع والطاعة والهجرة والجهاد. حدثناه قاسم بن محمد قال, where's the 5th one? Oh, السمع والطاعة. Be with the consensus of the group. Be with the large group. Al-Jama'a, in our world, it's our physical community, but in scholarship, it means the consensus opinions. Was-sama' wa-ta'a. Listen and obey. Listen to your rulers, or your leaders, and obey them. Meaning, the way that we have structure and hierarchy, everything. The household has structure and hierarchy. The masjid has structure and hierarchy. The company has structure and hierarchy. The charity organization has structure and hierarchy. The leaders, their opinion should be taken by they choose one amongst themselves. Then he should listen to their opinions. He should hear out their opinions, but he should make the decision with which he believes he's going to face Allah with that decision. When he makes a decision, you ought to follow it. Everyone's got to follow it. That's the way we operate. That's our method of. We don't do we don't have a system where every single person gets a say. No, only the leaders, those who know. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ. The people who know how to do things, only them are asked. But the leader has to make a decision. He's going to face God with that decision. Once you agreed on him as a leader, as pious and competent and trustworthy, now you have to obey him. You can't leave the board meeting and say, I totally disagree with this, I'm not doing it. No, you're a part of one board now. You're one shura. You may not like the decision. As long as it's valid and permitted, you got to follow it. You can't go out there and say, no, I don't like this decision. Hijra, leave places that are evil. Remember, the only fatwa of Shaykh Maghili, the only reason you are allowed to live in non-Muslim lands is you take part in the da'wah in some way, shape, and form in the spread of Islam. Well, jihad. Oh, jihad, forget about this. It's been gone for thousands of years, or hundreds of years, except maybe the Afghans, who are now $239 million wealthier than yesterday. Because the U.S. accidentally, how do you accidentally send $239 million to is it like Zelle, Wells Fargo account? Oh, shoot, I clicked the wrong account. I've done that before. In the Wells Fargo app, when you're transferring money and you hit from which account to which account, and you have to click save. It's a weird thing, right? You have to click save on the account that you want to send it to because there's a default account that you always send to. If you change it, the box clicks and a check comes out in the box. But if you don't hit save and you just hit OK, it stays on the default account. Then you hit send, right? I've done it many times. I sent money to the wrong account, right? Allah. Shay Ajib Jiddan. How in the world do you accidentally send 239 million? I'm telling you, they're reciting Surah Al-Waqi'ah, getting rizq from where they least expected it. It goes to show you that the whole operation in Afghanistan had nothing to do with the Taliban, right? Had everything to do with probably natural gas and everything else. You don't have the greatest army in the world spent $1 trillion or who knows what for 20 years, and you didn't reach your objective. The objective what must then have never been to Taliban. Must have been something else, right? Pipelines or whatever. Continuing on to the hadith. أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن الله أمر يحيى بن زكريا بخمس كلمات يعمل بهن ويأمر. Now we want to get to his discussion on bid'ah, so we're going to move on, turn the page. We're reading from a Tamheed here by Ibn Abdul Barr, waiting for his discussion on innovation. And he may have covered it elsewhere, but I don't see it here in the initial. Now he's moved on to different subjects now. No, he's moved on to different subjects. So if we can find his, I'm sure we can find his, if there is a discussion on the definition and nature of innovation, we'll go there. Otherwise, we'll move on. All right, so we're going to move on from Ibn Abdul Barr. We'll just put a question mark there because the section on the Tamheed didn't cover anything. So let's go now to Kitab Jami' al-Ulumi wal-Hikam by Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali. أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها. A lot of people out there, they imagine because you have a different view of innovation that you're part from the book and the sunnah. It's not. It's that the definition of innovation is vaster than what you're saying it is. What you're saying it is, everything that Sahaba didn't do is an innovation. That's not true even in your world. Because the companions never studied Nahu, for example. They never put rules of tajweed. They didn't put Fatha, Zabar, Besh, Kasra, and Sukun, and Shadda on the Quran. There's a lot of things. So as much as it's the sentiment is appreciated, but you have to do things with knowledge and realize that the opinion is far more vaster than what you're making it out to be. Same with Ilm Al Kalam. Ilm Al Kalam is a necessity to answer back groups who are innovated, groups who are completely outside of Islam, like atheists that try to poke doubts into the hearts of Muslims, and what seems to be contradictions, which many people who now open the Quran, open the Hadith on their own, who are secular types in the Islamic world and in the Islamic community, say, hold on, this book is contradictory. So it's upon the mutakallimin to answer these contradictions so that it may look to you as a contradiction. It's not. And from the mutakallimin, there are none of the premises of the Greek philosophers has ever entered into their thought at all. The mutakallimin of the Ash'ari and the Maturidiyya. All right. So in doing so, it's a fard kifaya to do so. And a lot of these are misunderstandings by, I'm telling you, pure people. And I've seen some of these kids who went from people who used to say, oh, Dr. Shadee, don't go to his masjid ever. It's all innovation. Within like 1 year, they're like very friendly. They're always asking me questions. And all of a sudden, what happened? What happened was that he had misunderstood even the ahadith of the angels. And I'll say it again, and I'll say it 1,000 times. It is a hadith that has many narrations. If you're lost in the desert, then call Ya ibadallah, because Allah has, O slaves of Allah, help me, because Allah has angels wandering doing different jobs. Right? That's the summary of the hadith. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And we said that calling upon other than Allah is shirk in 2 conditions. It's shirk in 2 conditions. Just he can't say it's just shirk, because it could not be shirk. What are the 2 conditions? Number 1, you're asking only something only Allah can give you, like forgiveness of my deeds. Bring something out from non-existence. Or you're asking something that, believing that whom you're asking has absolute power. You believe it has absolute power. As for if these two conditions are not there, then now you're maybe in permissibility, or you even maybe discouragement, and you may be even in prohibition. But you would not be in shirk unless these two conditions are observed. Let's come back to reading Ibn Hajar, Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali. وسنؤخر الكلام على المحدثات إلى ذكر حديث العرباض المشهور إليه ونتكلم ها هنا على الأعمال التي ليس عليها أمر الشارع ردها. الحديث يدل بمفهومه على أن كل عمل عليه أمره فهو غير مردود، والمراد بأمره ها هنا دينه وشرعه. Everything that is upon the Sharia and the Deen is not rejected. فالمعنى أن من كان عمله خارجا عن الشرع ليس مقتديا بالشرع فهو مردود. Any action that is outside the boundary of the Sharia, that is not guided by the Sharia, is rejected. ليس عليه أمرنا, the phrase that our affair is not, our command is not upon our command, he says it's pointing to the fact that the actions, all of the actions, they must be under the banner of the Sharia. There must be some evidence in the Sharia. And this is where their matters differ. Okay. And again, Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, I don't want to delay this one actually, but so I'm actually going to, he looks at Hadith al-Irbad. Let me look that up. Because I don't want to skip Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali. I want to have the Hanbali perspective here. You're just going to have to wait and bear with me here. You're just going to have to wait. Almost there. How's the chat going?
There's two guys going, being obnoxious. But, and then chat's all
I really wanted to get Ibn Rajab on this. Oh, here we go. Let's do that. Okay, I think this is it. Okay. فأما العبادات فما كان منها خارجا عن حكم الله ورسوله بالكلية. He talks about عبادات and معاملات. فهو مردود. In عبادات, anything that comes that is outside of the commandment of Allah and His Messenger is rejected. وعامله يدخل تحت قوله أم لهم شركاء شرعوا لهم من الدين ما لم يأذن به الله. Do they have partners that they're taking orders from of what to do in the religion that Allah has not permitted? فمن تقرب إلى الله بعمل لم يجعله الله ورسوله قربا فعمله باطل مردود. If you're trying to draw near to Allah with an action that Allah and His Messenger have not legislated for you, then it is rejected. فكانت صلاتهم عند البيت مكاء وتصدية. For example, in the before Islam, their tawaf was by clapping and whistling and things like that. They had invented that after Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, and that's an example of taqarrub, an act of ibadah that is useless. Okay, that is mardud, rejected and blameworthy. And he says, كَمَنْ تَقَرَّبَ إِلَى اللَّهِ تَعَالَى بِسَمَاعِ الْمَلَاهِ. Someone who listens to a song and says, I'm going to draw near to Allah by this, or by dancing. Okay. Things like this. وليس ما كان قرب في عبادة يكون قرب في غيرها مطلقا فقد رأى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم رجلا قائما في الشمس فسأل عنه فقيل إنه نذر أن يقوم ولا يقعد ولا يستظل وأن يصوم فأمره النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن يقعد ويستظل وأن يتم صومه فلم يجعل قيامه وبروزه للشمس قربة يوفى بنذره. So if you swear an oath to do an act of worship that turns out to has no basis, as this companion had done, your oath is invalid in the first place and you don't have to abide by it. A man was fasting and the Prophet saw him standing in the sun at an hour that nobody stands in the sun. He said, why is this man standing in the sun? He said, he swore an oath that his fast, he's going to add to his fast. No shade, no sitting. The Prophet ﷺ said, sit and sit in the shade. All right, leave this and sit in the shade. And don't bother with such an oath which is invalid. وقد روي أن ذلك كان في يوم جمعة عند سماع خطبة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. And that was during Jum'ah. That's why he was stuck out to the Prophet. It was in the middle of Jum'ah. Okay, let's see what else Ibn Rajab says. ما كان قربة في موطن يكون قربة في كل المواطن. Now listen to this. That which is a qurba in a specific location, in a specific setting, is a qurba all the time. في كل المواطن. Listen to this principle. That which is a qurba in one setting is a qurba all the time. Okay? Is not a qurba all the time. It is not a qurba all the time. For example, he says here, كالصلاة والأذان والدعاء. So adhan, is that not a way to draw near to Allah by calling the adhan? But you can't do it all the time. Right? Standing at Arafah and making dua even in the sun and the sun's hitting your head. It's a qurba in Arafah, but not in other places, times and places. فدل على أنه ليس, not every act of worship in one setting is an act of worship is acceptable elsewhere. وإنما يتبع ذلك ما وردت به الشريعة في مواضعها. So you have to see what is the location of an act being acceptable. كذلك من تقرب بعبادة نهي عنها بخصوصها كمن صام يوم العيد أو صلى وقت النهي. A clear example of that, you can't fast on Eid. You can't pray in the nawafil in the time when that's forbidden. أما من عمل عملا أصله مشروع وقربة ثم أدخل فيه ما ليس بمشروع أو أخل فيه بمشروع فهذا مخالف أيضا للشريعة بقدر إخلاله بما أخل به. Or you have a matter that is of the Sharia but you removed or you added. أو إدخاله ما أدخل فيه وهل يكون عمله من أصله مردودا عليه أم لا. So now we have to discuss this. You have a matter that's mashru'. You remove something from it or you added something to it. فهذا لا يطلق القول فيه برد ولا قبول. We cannot say is accepted nor rejected. بل ينظر فيه. Rather you examine it. And here is where Ibn Rajab is pointing. And this is what we're talking about of matters that if they have things that the Sahaba had not done in it, he's saying here, but it's mixed with something that is mashru', ينظر فيه. Okay? You have to examine it. You cannot say it's fully accepted or fully rejected. You have to examine it. فإن كان من أخل به من أجزاء العمل أو شروطه موجبا لبطلانه في الشريعة كمن أخل بالطهارة للصلاة مع القدرة عليها أو كمن أخل بالركوع والسجود. So if what you remove from it was a precondition or an obligation of it, then at that point, then we could say the whole thing is rejected. Okay. فهذا يقال إن عمله مردود من أصله. So if you remove what you remove from it is an obligation or a precondition, then the whole thing is invalid. وإن كان قد زاد في العمل المشروع ما ليس بمشروع فزيادة مردودة عليه بمعنى أنها لا تكون قربة ولا يثاب عليها ولكن تارة يبطل بها العمل من أصله فيكون مردودا كمن زاد في الصلاة ركعة عمدا مثلا وتارة لا يبطله ولا يرده من أصله كمن توضأ أربعا أو صام الليل مع النهار وواصل في صيامه وقد يبدل بعض ما يؤمر به في العبادات بما هو منهي عنه. So for example, someone who makes wudu and he does everything 4 times, not 3 times. That fourth is rejected, but the rest of the wudu is valid. Likewise, somebody who, for example, and by the way, there's discussion about that because the hadith of Abu Hurairah says we'll increase. So there is discussion about increasing beyond the number of 3. But in the majority view, there's no need. Only if there's a need. Like there's some dirt that you can't get off your hand, that caked or something. Now, for example, if you prayed Salatul Maghrib and you added a Rak'a, now the whole Salah is invalid. So addition, when you add something, you have to look at, it has to be examined. Is that addition negating the whole act, or is just the addition negated, or is the addition completely valid? As we said, Shafi's permitting of the adhkar of the Egyptians, the takbirat of the Egyptians, where they added beyond what the Prophet ﷺ had said. So therefore, it's not mardud at all. كمن ستر عورته في الصلاة بثوب محرم أو توضأ للصلاة بماء مغصوب أو صلى ببقعة غصب فهذا قد اختل. Now there's matters that are differed upon. What is the status of someone's salah who covered his awrah with a stolen garment? Is the stealing haram and the prayer valid, or is the stealing haram and the prayer is invalid? Sorry. اختلف فيه. اختلف العلماء. The scholars differed on matter, and that's the whole point of telling a lot of these well-intentioned and pure brothers who have learned one matter without realizing that there's actually discussion on it. Okay. Another example, someone, he stole a water bottle from a gas station, ran, made wudu with it. Right? Is the stealing haram, and the wudu valid, or the stealing haram and the wudu invalid? Or stolen land. You stole, right? So ulama differed. So what's the mardud here? What is mardud? What's mardud is the sin. That's it. That's what the majority are upon. Okay. The sin is, you have the sin for stealing the water, but your wudu is valid. So he says here, اختلف العلماء فيه هل عمله مردود من أصله أو أنه غير مردود وتبرأ به الذمة من عهدة الواجب وأكثر الفقهاء على أنه ليس بمردود من أصله. Majority say, yes, the stealing is forbidden, but the wudu would be valid. So what they're doing, this is what it means here. يجب عليه النظر فيه. You have to look into the matter and separate. It's not just all going to be one stroke and you have your answer. Okay. Okay, so there he continues talking about that issue. وقد استنكر هذا القول وجعله بدعة فدل على أنه لم يعلم عن أحد من السلف القول بإعادة الصلاة مثل etc. All right, so the point of that he's making is that an innovation that is within the realm of the Sharia has to be examined. What are you adding, and does that addition, is it blameworthy, and does it negate the entire act of worship, or it's blameworthy in itself, or it's not even blameworthy in itself? Okay. If you accidentally add a Rak'a in Salah, the questioner is asking, accidentally is different from intentionally. We're talking about intentionally here. If you accidentally added a Rak'a, as soon as you remember, you go down, you salam out, and then you pray 2 ruku'ah of sahu for adding to the Salah. Okay. So he gives many other examples, and he goes into many other examples, but ultimately, here, can you answer this? Tell them, take a message. All right, he goes to other examples. Let's now move to the next book, and that, yeah, take a message. Answer it and take a message, please. Let's go to Ibn Hajar al-Haytami now. We're now on Ibn Hajar al-Haytami. We read all this we're reading on the nature of every innovation is a misguidance, which we uphold. Every innovation is a misguidance. What is the meaning? Yes, we know that the wording would indicate that every single one, whereas that's not the understanding of the companions, because they held that of the Imams, as a Shafi noted that the Sahaba themselves had to do things the Prophet ﷺ never did, such as gather the Quran. And the Salaf had to, the second and third generation. Oh, I don't want to talk to him. He said that they had to study grammar. Second and third generation had to start studying grammar. It's an innovation that was an obligation. They had to set schedules, even though some of the Sahaba didn't like setting schedules. So it shows that there is room for disagreement on this matter. You have Abdul Malik ibn Marwan writing to a Sahabi, please come to this newly established schedule of advising the Muslims after Fajr and after Asr, talking to them, encouraging them. The Prophet ﷺ never did that. He never set a schedule. He advised when he advised. I'm not coming to this innovation. Then you have Ibn Abbas setting a schedule, and Ibn Mas'ud setting a schedule. The difference being they recognize that their schedule is just for the need of it, not because there's anything blessed or set for that day or time. All right, now let's read Ibn Hajar al-Haytami. Wait, hold on a second. وفي بعض الطرق ان هذه كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وهو قياس مركب متصل من الشكل الأول كل محدثة في النار يعني صاحبها من فاعل متبع وزاد ابن ماجه فإنما المؤمن كالجمل وأجيب بأن ما ابن ماجه أخرجه من طريق. Is there going to be a discussion or just the matan the sanad he's talking about? No. No discussion. Let's move on because we're taking up a lot of time here. Let's go to Imam Nawawi. من سن في الإسلام سنة حسنة فله أجرها إلى آخره فيه الحديث فيه الحث على الابتداء بالخيرات وسن السنن الحسنات والتحذير من اختراع الأباطيل والمستقبحات وسبب هذا الكلام في هذا الحديث أنه قال في أوله فجاء رجل بصرة كادت كفه. This hadith, whoever establishes a good sunnah in Islam, he has the reward of it, and everyone who does it. So he says, Imam Nawawi says, this is a indicator of encouragement to begin to do good things and to establish good precedent. That's what it means here, precedent, and warning from inventing something that is batil, that is bad, ugly, mustaqbaha. And the reason for this speech, or the reason for this saying this, في هذا الحديث أنه قال في أوله فجاء. The reason for all this, the setting of this hadith, a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فتتابع الناس وكان الفضل العظيم للبادي بهذا الخير والفاتح لباب هذا الإحسان. He came with a big basket that he couldn't even carry. Okay. And apparently he gave it in charity. So the Prophet ﷺ said, وفي هذا الحديث تخصيص قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم كل محدث بدعة كل بدعة ضلالة وأن المراد به المحدثات الباطلة. All right. So this man had done a charitable act, and the Prophet said this hadith. Now to the part of what's innovation, Imam Nawawi says al-murad bihi. What the Prophet intended here is only the new things that are batil. They have no basis in the Sharia. وَالْبِدَعُ الْمَذْمُومَةِ, and innovations that are blameworthy. وقد سبق بيان هذا في كتاب صلاة الجمعة وذكرنا هناك أن البدعة 5 أقسام. We mentioned in the chapter on Jum'ah that bid'ah is of 5 categories. واجبها ومن واجبة ومندوبة ومحرمة ومكروهة ومباحة. And that's all he's saying about it. Okay. And unfortunately we'd have to go back into the chapter on Salah, Al-Jum'ah. Let's look it up here. Because in Nawawi we have to read in Nawawi. Can't skip in Nawawi. Okay. That's all he says here. All right, let's see here. Here it is. كتاب وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل بدعة ضلالة. ثم يقول أنا أولى بكل مؤمن من نفسه من ترك مالا لأهله ومن ترك دينا أو ضياعا فإلي وعلي. في هذا الحديث جمل. In this hadith there are many benefits, and he's going to now discuss the meaning of the muhdathat here. First he goes into the sanad. He discusses the sanad, and then وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ هذا عام مخصوص والمراد غالب البدع. The reason that he says here, it's amun makhsus. It's general wording that indicates the majority. All right. And the intended meaning here of this hadith says in Nawawi, the intended meaning of every single innovation is a misguidance, is that the majority of innovations are misguidance. Okay. قال أهل اللغة هي كل شيء عمل على غير مثال سابق. In language, an innovation is everything that has no precedent. قال العلماء, the scholars in Sharia, the definition of bid'ah, it's that it's in 5 categories depending on the nature of it. And they said that it is, as we said, permissible, obligatory, forbidden, recommended, or discouraged. And the mutakallimin said about this, for example, their response to malahida, their response to heretics and atheists. Like that would be, for example, something obligatory communal obligation to do and recommended for an individual to do. Tasnifi kutub al-ilm, writing down books of knowledge, right? Building schools and other things. And from the mubah, having different types of food and big menus, etc., like that, it could be permitted. وغير ذلك والحرام والمكروه ظاهران, and that which is haram and makruh is known, is clear. It's a zahir, meaning that which entails something forbidden or something discouraged. وقد أوضحت المسألة بأدلتها المبسوطة في تهذيب الأسماء واللغات فإذا عرف ما ذكرته علم أن الحديث من العام المخصوص. Yes, the wording is all innovations, but what is intended is the specific, that which is a misguidance. Okay, and he says there are many ahadith like this. Okay, يؤيد ما قلنا. Umar ibn Khattab is saying about the Tarawih is an example of indicating that not every single innovation is a misguidance. So it's amun makhsus. The wording is general, and it's as if it's an all-encompassing principle, but it's specifying certain things, such as Umar ibn Khattab, in Nawawi saying, Umar ibn Khattab's accepting and praising something that never happened in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Okay, that would indicate that it is general but intending a specific form of innovation, and that the reason is that most innovations are misguidance. كل بدعة مؤكدا بكل بل يدخله التخصيص. Okay. And that's another example of just because something begins with every doesn't mean it doesn't have exceptions. كقوله تعالى تدمر كل شيء. Allah says in the Quran, Allah sends a storm that destroys all things. Clearly it didn't destroy all things. تدمر كل شيء بأمر ربها. So clearly the word all in the Sharia does not mean all things, everything. Allah sent a storm that destroys all things, right? Well, no, not all things were destroyed. The Kaaba wasn't destroyed from that, for example. Not all things. The ground wasn't destroyed. The trees may have not been destroyed. But in general, it appears most things, vast majority of things. And then okay, so that's all he has to say about this. All right, so that's a good summary. Now let's go to Suyuti. أينك يا سيوطي؟ يا سيوطي أين كلامك؟ ابن رجب. click السيوطي كتاب مرقات الصعود إلى سنن أبي داود. فإن كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة. قال الخطابي هذا خاص في بعض الأمور دون بعض. Suyuti says the exact same thing. He said this is specific. The language is kul, but as he said, as we just said, not every mention of the word every is actually every, but it's most. Could be most. So he says this hadith, this every new thing is a blameworthy innovation, is specific to which ones. وكل شيء أحدث على غير مثال أصل من أصول الدين, that which does not have a basis in the religion. وأما ما كان منها مبنيا على قواعد الأصول فليس ببدعة ولا ضلالة. That act which is established on the foundations of the religion, but the companions had never done it and the Salaf had never done it, but it's on the basis and the foundations and the purposes of the religion, is not blameworthy and is not sinful. That's it. That's all he said here. SubhanAllah. That was very brief. So we brought something from every one of them. Okay. And that's it. Khalas, we're done with that. Let's take 2-3 questions and then we wrap up. قُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ الَّذِي فِيهِ تَسْتَفْتِيَانِ. So the summary here is that this hadith should point us all to more ta'awun when we study the sharh of this hadith. It should lead us to more ta'awun. Neither are those who interpret matters to be based upon the religion and it's good and the result is good. Not their knowledge is not absolute knowledge or binding on it. Nor are those who, in matters of opinion, on matters, new matters that are deemed has a basis in religion and it has a good result and does not contradict the Sharia, that all of that is blameworthy and that doesn't exist, that concept doesn't exist, nor is their opinion God's word that we're all bound by. So there are masail khilaf. These are questions of difference. So keep in mind, by reading this, I'm not saying that there's only that one opinion. That no, there is 5 the categories of bid'ah. Yeah, there are 5, But that doesn't mean we all agree on what goes where. Clearly, somebody could hold one act to be an innovation and he deems it harmful and he deems it has no basis. And there could be another one who deems, yes, it clearly has a basis and it's benefiting the people and there's not removing anything of the sunnah. And there could be khilaf on this. And that's, I think, what's important. So we're doing, like, for example, on the gatherings of dhikr, we don't want to just bring one evidence that suits what I may personally practice or not practice. We got to bring all the evidences to show the jama'ah and the people who are listening to this that it really is on both sides. There's room for both opinions to be completely valid. And it should never be that a dhanni, a matter of speculation and seeking out evidence, should be argued upon and community splits upon and people don't talk to people upon. It'd be jahl. Hadra Dawood, why did you say Imam Nawawi is an Ashari? He himself is, because that's the truth about him. So is Ibn Hajar al-Askalani. He is Hadra Dawood. هو رجل أشعري. No discussion about that. No discussion about that. So now, when a brother comes and says, no, I think that this is a bid'ah. And you could say that, but with what do you hold it to be a bid'ah? With absolute certainty or with your speculation and opinion? You can say it's speculation and opinion, but a very, very strong one. I say, no problem. And what is your view of the other brothers? No, they're innovators. So that means what? He should divorce his wife? Because that's an obligation once. If a man is truly an innovator, meaning like a Shi'i or a Qadari, that marriage is haram to stay in that marriage. It's valid. It's not zina, but it's haram to stay in such a relationship. So prayer behind such a person, is it sinful? Because the prayer behind the innovator. So don't forget the levels of innovation. Innovation that you think it's makruh, it's makruh as an innovation, or is it put you into the category of aqeedah here that you're an innovator? And that's the big difference of people, what they have to understand when they say something innovative. I have no problem. Somebody says this misbah is a bid'ah, fine, but it's a bid'ah makruha. You consider it makruh in your opinion too, right? So, for example, the Hanafis have something far bigger than this. They don't eat any of the crayfish that Allah has given us to enjoy, like lobster, crab. And I think they don't even eat fish with scales, or without scales. And they deem it to be haram. So he's looking at you and he believes you're eating maita. But he believes you on what basis? On a basis of opinion. Not a basis that this is God's book and God's law. Yeah, it is God's book and God's law to him by speculation and ijtihad. As a result of that, I can sit next to him eating the lobster, eating a lobster tail sandwich or whatever they sell in Boston. Right? Lobster bisque. And he's right in front of me. And there's nothing offensive about that. And nor is he a hypocrite for being my friend, because it's a matter of difference of opinion. And that's the whole point. Since we're on the topic, how do scholars differentiate between Deen and Dunya? Bid'ah in Deen versus... So it should be ibadat and mu'amalat. There are ibadat and there are or not even mu'amalat. I don't necessarily think the bifurcation of Deen and Dunya has no basis. It clearly has a basis in lived life, right? In lived life, it has a basis. When we... everyday life, there are matters of religion, like, for example, moral matters. Woman gets raped, when can she have an abortion? It's a matter of deen, right? All right, so let's say the mufti said, yeah, within 40 days you were raped, yes, you can have this abortion. Okay, the technology of how to do it is dunya. Or, for example, the nature of the meat has to be slaughtered. That's deen. How do I cook it? Let me go to some website, non-Muslim website, to learn a recipe. That's dunya. Didn't Zayn al-Din al-Iraqi and Tajuddin al-Subki warn against Ibn Abd al-Barr? Maybe, I don't know. I can't say anything. But maybe in terms of his positions in Aqeedah, because he does sometimes have positions that are all over the place. What if a husband is not paying Mahr for 25 years but agrees to pay it now? How does he account for how much the money was worth? No, we don't do that. If he owed you the Mahr 25 years ago, and he never paid it, that's on you and your wali. Why did you tolerate this? You had rights. What is your rights? Don't touch me. That's your right to say that. If he didn't pay up the mahr, right, when it was due. But you don't get it in the value of the dollar back then. You don't get that. You get 25,000. If I see an innovator at the gym, a sect person who upholds sects, that's not a word you want to mispronounce, but he upholds some heresies in Aqeedah, you ignore them completely. You don't befriend them. We're very strict with that. We're very strict with that. And I'm telling you, the shame of the matter is that we're very strict with someone who is a heretic in religion. He negates and he goes against that which cannot be gone against. Qat'i text. We don't want to mix up our religion here. Qat'i, explicit text. No room for interpretation. They go against it. We call those innovators. We have no relationship with them. We don't befriend them. We don't hang out with them. Because they're rights that Allah has. We all know if someone was to say, for example, make fun of my friend's race. Let's say I have a friend who is Native American. And another guy in the community, he's always railing against him, making Native American jokes. At some point, we say, "Khalas, we're not dealing with this person anymore. I'm offended because you offended my friend." In our society, we really elevate the rights of people. We don't elevate the rights of God. Nobody cares about the rights of God. But we do. So if someone is going to openly go against God's word, his word that cannot be interpreted, is not up for interpretation. Some is, some isn't. Some verses are, some verses aren't. That person is in our religion is called a fasiq. Likewise, the one whose beliefs are correct, but he openly sins against God. No shame, opens a liquor store. We have no relation with him anymore. Who's the biggest CNN anchor, most established face in America right now? Anderson Cooper. Can Anderson Cooper get caught hanging out with, let's say, a racist, for example, like a known racist, right? A known supporter of, let's say, Putin. Can Anderson Cooper get caught hanging out with Jackson Hinkle? He can't get caught having a cup of coffee with him, right? It's a scandal. CNN will be in big trouble. Jackson Hinkle essentially works for Putin, right? Anderson Cooper's Mr. Establishment, CNN, clean cut, right? All that. He can't get caught hanging out with such people. You can't get caught hanging out and fraternizing with someone who offends God every single day, publicly and openly. That's the idea. That's the concept. That doesn't mean you won't have some interaction here or there. I can have a dentist and I don't ask his religion. Then I discover, oh, this guy is a Shia. All right, that's his personal religion, right? But I'm not there to be friends with him. But he's a good dentist. I'll go to him, right? No problem. If I had the choice from the get-go, maybe I wouldn't have gone to him if he was, right? Maybe I wouldn't have gone to him just to keep the money within the community. But nonetheless, even if I did say, yeah, here's a Sunni guy, he's a nice, beautiful Hanafi brother, and this is an Iranian Shi'i, but his dental reviews are terrible. He doesn't know how to do surgery on teeth. This guy's dental reviews are top-notch. I'm taking my kid to the guy who's top-notch. His Shiism, that's his personal business. And we're not there for friendship. So the same concept that God has rights, and I know the new generation doesn't really care about that. They care about the rights of slaves, rights of people, not the rights of Allah. So such a person, we do ignore them and we disavow. We disavow from them. right? We disavow from them completely. Is the Hadra permissible? Mukhtalaf fihi, but most say it's no one disagrees that it's an innovation, but they disagree on its ruling. Okay. Abu Talha says some people say there is no good bid'ah. No, there clearly is. Right? There clearly is. But it depends on how you're defining bid'ah at this point, right? If the very definition of it is that it's blameworthy actions, then clearly there can't be a good bid'ah. But if the definition of it is something new, then we say that it goes into the 5 categories. And we just read them so you can rewind the video for that. Brother Cash asked a theological question here, says, it said that your death is, the time of your death is written. One will die at such a time no matter what. The sabab of it might differ. You may be run over, you may be die of death, a natural death, etc. Does it mean that that person would have died anyway? Allah knows best about these things, because we can't really say, but ultimately all we can say for sure is that when and how you die is written for you. Now, what may be different is, are you going to be blameworthy or praiseworthy? Right? Are you going to be blameworthy or praiseworthy? Someone who dies of cancer, for example, 99%, we feel terrible about them, right? What if he died of cancer and he said, you know what? No, I'm not going to go into the doctors. I'm just going to try to pray, and that's it. I'm not going to the doctors. Now, he dies of cancer just like the other one died of cancer, but he may die blameworthy. Hey, what's going on? You had 3 kids. Why don't you go to the doctor? Why don't you try to save your life? So he may die the same time, same place, but he may be blameworthy. Right? Personal thoughts on the Hadra and movement and swaying in Dhikr? We don't do that. We do Dhikr. No, holding that it is a matter of ijtihad. Remember, we don't divide our community up or allegiances based on matters of ijtihad. I hold this a matter of ijtihad. And I have very close friends of mine who say, no, I prefer not to sit there. I think that it's an innovation. But what does he think it's an innovation based on? Based on his ijtihad too. Matters of ijtihad should never be the source of breaking a relationship. And the ignorant person thinks matters of ijtihad, he elevates them to matters that are explicit. Ijtihad means scholarly effort. If any matter requires scholarly effort to get to that conclusion, stop there. Right? That's the opinion you chose to follow. Those are the scholars you chose to follow. That's not religion. Qat'i, explicit, definitive matters. That's what unifies and breaks relationships. That's what our brotherhood should be about. And the one who always talks about this is Dr. Hatim al-Hajj, which is why I have so much respect for him, because he brings that forth and he hold on, matters of ikhtilaf, let it be matters of ikhtilaf. It should not be a sectarian matter. No one got a notification when I went live, so are we shadow banned? Allah knows best. Allah knows best.
Yeah, you weren't even coming up in my feed.
They're trying to shadow ban us, no doubt about that.
You used to be at the top.
Yeah. So the sponsoring one, how do you explain Ash'arism for beginners? For beginners, it's an attempt by the scholars to answer matters that had not come up before in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. They founded something called Ilm Al Kalam. In the same way, Shafi founded a science called Usul al-Fiqh, the method of deriving rulings. Shafi, the mutakallimin, such as Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, founded a science in which you would answer back to malahida, atheists. You would answer back to deviants, those who deviated away from explicit texts within the ummah in theology. And you would answer back to those who ask questions about seeming apparent contradictions in the religion. And the usul, this is the goal. That's the goal. What is the methodology? The methodology is to abide by the word of Allah and the word of his messenger and take guidance from that. And in arguing these points across, you argue them upon the basic assumptions that every word has to have a set meaning and no statement can contradict itself. The basic rules of discussion, the basic rules of argumentation or of establishing any meaningful statement. So they have to observe these basic rules. These are the usul. The founder, Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, and the Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, the two founders. The followers, the Hanafis followed the Maturidis, and the Malikis and Shafi'is followed the Ash'a'ira. The ultimately, is it ijtihad? It's as ijtihadi as usul al-fiqh. It's as ijtihadi as what makes a hadith sahih or not. So you have to do it. You have to answer these people. You cannot leave the atheist to run free, sowing doubts in the hearts of Muslims, or a Shi'i to run free. You also, it has to establish, because we interact with these people, right? It has to establish what renders a belief kufri, bid'i, or khata, mistake. So beliefs, now people have different beliefs. So, and I have to interact with these people. So now we need an answer. Is this person out of Islam or in Islam? Or is there a middle category called innovators? What makes someone out of Islam or in Islam? What makes someone an innovator? And what's my interaction with them? And what beliefs are not neither of those, but they're just wrong? What is what are the parameters, or what is the logic behind why such a belief will put you out of Islam? And they brought a good answer to that, which is explicit in its language and far widespread. Every single person knows this. That means God and his prophet repeated this so many times. It is the definition of Islam. It's been when you enter Islam, these are the assumptions you have of the word Islam. That puts you out of Islam if you don't believe in that. Then, like for example, someone says, I'm a Muslim, I pray 5 times a day, I pray all the sunnah, and I fast every other day, but I don't believe the 5 prayers are obligatory. I just believe that they're recommended. I fast Ramadan every year, but I believe it's recommended. So at that point, you're going against what every Muslim knows. That's an obligation. Repeated over and over in the Quran and the Sunnah. So you are now out of Islam, no matter how much time you pray or say I'm a Muslim, because the definition of Islam is that. The mutakallimin, the scholar, these theologians had to also define what is the sect and why is that there. Why am I saying this? Because all over the internet people talk about this, so we have to discuss it. We're not trying to be divisive, we're actually trying to be inclusive. And if there's a rationale for why certain doctrines are and ideas are innovation. And the rationale is you went against an explicit text. Has no other interpretation. So clearly you're just following your whims. Just like someone, he says, I'm a vegetarian, except I eat steak every day. That's it, one steak, that's it. No, you went against the word vegetarian at that point. But what if someone says, I'm a vegetarian, but I eat fish? Probably, maybe there's some, I can't say you're not a vegetarian, but there may be, the real vegetarians may think you're like a heretic. Pescatarian, right? So at that point now there are matters that are explicit, but they're not widespread. Not a lot of people would know them. We all laugh when someone says I am a vegetarian, I eat steak, because it's well known. But can a vegetarian eat like fake beef? Beef that was made, in a lab. It's beef. It's not vegetables. It's beef, but it was made in a lab. No animal was harmed.
Like,
right? Not plant. Beef.
Okay,
but lab made.
Okay.
So that's a matter. If there was a holy book of vegetarianism, they'd need to discuss that. Who knows, right? So in this band here, this category, it's explicit things you wouldn't know it unless you studied it. So you're forgiven until you're informed about it. But once you're informed about it, if you still plan to be stubborn, you're an innovator. Well, what's the spiritual result of the innovator? His good deeds don't count until he fixes his belief. And everything they do in Islam with the community is valid, but sinful to be with them. So to marry them, it's a valid marriage, but it's sinful. Valid, but sinful. To pray behind him, your prayer is valid, but you're sinful for praying behind him. So on and so forth. And we should stay away from them. Right?
Is that only if you know?
Yeah, well, only if you know. With certainty, not know with speculation. He looks like a Wahhabi. No, that's not how it works, right? He's got a big beard. A lot of people have big beards. It's wonderful to have a big beard, right? That's the idea here. And then there are some beliefs that are just wrong, simply wrong, but they don't make you innovators, right? They don't make you out of Islam.
Like they're just errors.
Just errors. And other beliefs are nothing, permitted to believe it. Like the beliefs related to stories the Prophet told about that are very weak hadiths. The Prophet told this story. It's a very weak hadith. But you choose to believe it. Khalas. It's up to you. Believe that or not believe that. We're trying here to have inclusivity. Inclusivity does not mean we include everybody. But we have a logic behind what we include and what we not include. And a lot of the fighting that's happening in the community and online is on matters that the brother is trying to follow the right thing. He's trying to do the right thing. And he was told, this is the right thing. Where I'm saying, no, this is actually the right thing. Right? There's an expanse here and a spectrum of matters of opinion. Valid opinions. And I gave you the proofs of the scholars who said those things. We got to go, folks. Other work to do. So many good things. Abdul Basit Rida, Ashari and Maturidi differences. There I have a book on it, but it's very, very minor details, I would say, in the grand scheme of things. A brother says, what if there's a person who's on innovation, right? He is born into a sect, okay? But he's got better character than anybody else you know, right? Well, can I befriend that person? I'll tell you the conditions of that. If there is a potential that this person is very religious and will try to invite you to his religion, then no. If he just happens to be born that way, then no problem, right? And that's how we deal with our neighbors too. Like you got neighbors, maybe, of course, they're going to be different religions, right? But the question is, do they try to invite your kids to become that? Or are they just not? That's really where you have to draw the line.
So it depends on their intention.
Yeah, it depends on their intention. Because let's say this person, he says he's like a great friend of mine. Fine, that's all fine and good. Until he gets religious. You're going to have problems, right? And we don't deny that a person may have great character and the wrong beliefs.
Yeah.
It's possible, right? And you have the right beliefs and bad character. And we uphold that in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the beliefs are more important than character. We don't like to hear that. But why do we believe that? Because if you have the right belief, you have the potential to perfect your character. If you got the wrong belief, you'll never perfect your character. Yes, he's got honesty right, but he doesn't have worship right. Mikhail Yasser, I take the questions from Instagram, but I also take them more readily on YouTube, Safina Sadi YouTube channel. So if somebody's got the wrong beliefs, but great character, he's closed the door on ever perfecting the most important elements of his character, which is about your position with God. So that's why it's a big difference. A guy is a terrible driver. He falls asleep. He makes wrong turns. He's not paying attention. But his GPS is set on the right address. Another guy's a wonderful driver, always on the speed limit, great stamina, making great time, but he's actually got the wrong address in the GPS. Which one are you going to go with? I don't want to go with the guy who's a bad driver, but if I had to choose, I got to go with that guy because he has the potential to get back on the right track. Whereas the other one does not have that potential. It's a guarantee. He will, with great character, end up at the wrong destination. And that's the difference, right? And that's a difference without ever trying to be sectarian about things and break up relationships. But we just do have to know this because we live in a cosmopolitan area and cosmopolitan world these days, but we do have beliefs. So how do we navigate these two? And that's what we're talking about here. Let's see what Maliki Clay is saying. Muhammad Abdul Wahhab. Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, his brother is the one who negated his errors. He has a lot of errors. He's got a lot of errors. I have to say that. And his brother is the one who answered him. Ladies and gentlemen, Kinetic Nomad is saying, are you saying we should have no Shia friends if they're calling you to that religion, or that you feel that eventually that he may? Then clearly not, right? Clearly not. Can I have a white friend? Yes, unless he's a white supremacist, right? If he's calling you, because we know that people are just born in religions, right? So if that's the case, that's not going to be the issue. The issue is, does he call you to that? Or does he have the potential to call you to that? And if you're going to get very deep and marry this into that religion or that family, yes, the guy may not care now, but he may care when he has kids. Or his mother may care to the point that she eventually invites your kids to go down that route. So that's what we're talking about. That's why we have to understand that. Munib Iqbal, why do we not have seclusion like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? We do have seclusion, but that a seclusion that doesn't take away from other sunan that we have to do in life or obligations. So, for example, the way that we have seclusion today is in small amounts at a time that is good for your mental health and doesn't take away from your obligations.
I was with Shaykh last year,
Yeah.
and the whole of his tour was basically around seclusion, and
Yeah.
he basically advised that you ask permission from the spiritual doctor of when you can increase your amount in seclusion.
Yeah.
So you don't end up being a detriment to yourself, and you're actually healing yourself and maximizing your benefit, because seclusion doesn't work unless you're in sukhwa also.
Yes, exactly. You need a balance. It has to be balanced out. It can't be excessively done like that to the point that it hurts your mental health, your social well-being. So it has to be balanced like that. All right, we got to go straight to the end. Jazakumullahu khairan, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.